It is time to start the official meeting now.
Ray, you better unmute yourself. Sorry, hit mute all.
Yep, nope, I was expecting that, but I wasn't as fast with the mouse as I had hoped to be. So a little etiquette. As you've all just seen, we've muted everybody. Remember to unmute yourself if you have something to say. Remute yourself when you're done, if you would, please. You can also use the chat feature and the raise hand feature, and we will call on you if you have questions, comments, or otherwise feedback. The other bit of housekeeping is you will see your name, or we hopefully have your name up. If you could add your call sign behind it, that would be really helpful. Ann has to do our attendance, and it really helps to have a first name, last name, and call sign. If you're unfamiliar with that, you'll see at the top of your box the three little dots. Click on that, go down, select rename, and that'll let you change the name as it appears for this session. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and dive into the meeting. This meeting is being recorded, so if you have concerns about your video being recorded, if you could shut your video off, that would be best. Ultimately, if you absolutely cannot be recorded, you know, have your video off, have your audio off, or you know, elect to not participate in the meeting. But we do record these meetings as there is a great desire for people who are unable to attend to watch them later. Plus, if you find something interesting, it's great to be able to go back and see it. With that, we're going to go ahead and get started. We do not do roll call in the Zoom, but we will have Ann go through and do a roll call of everybody who's on the Zoom meeting here in a little bit. But let's kick it off with Secretary Minutes. Ann.
Hi, good morning. I emailed the notice about the Secretary Minutes being posted to the website on April 9th. So does anyone have a motion?
I move that we accept the minutes.
Thanks, Randy.
Motion's been made to accept. Do we have a second?
I second.
Have a second. Any questions or discussion? Minutes are accepted, and we will move on to the next item. Sorry, I'm getting my screen ahead of myself here. Let me get back. Oh, Randy is jumping into it. He knows he's next. So here goes the treasurer report.
All right, treasurer's report, pretty simple. Pulled in about $976 and had no expenses. Our general checking account has $10,489.88 in it, and our repeater maintenance account has $605. Our repeater endowment has grown quite a bit, except for $15,316. That's a delta of $6,803 over what's been contributed. And our general investment still not doing great, $513 minus $59.75. Any questions about the treasurer's report? Looking for a
Hearing
motion.
nothing, is there a motion to accept?
Yep. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any question or discussion? Hearing none, we're going to go ahead and move on. I know that some people have pointed out that I missed new attendees. I'm going to pick that up just before we do Ann with the attendees on the call. So bear with me. I'm doing it slightly out of order. With that, we will go into Randy and the VE report.
All right, VE report. Again, most of our VEs in the club are participating through the Lake Washington Ham Club. They're online testing. They are definitely in need of VE. So if you're a general or above, we encourage you to get qualified or certified through GLARG, the Greater Los Angeles Area Amateur Radio Club, and come along and help us support the VE program at the Lake Washington Ham Club. And that's about it.
Thank you for that. Any questions or comments on it? In that case, we're going to go ahead and move on into education report. I don't know if we have anything as COVID has restricted it, but Jim, are you on the call and do you have anything on education? Not seeing anything. I don't think Jim was able to make the call, but due to COVID, we haven't had any real education going on other than John's Thursday night Zoom meetings. That seems to be the extent of it at this point, but hopefully that will change sometime here in the near future. With that, we'll go to Ann to new members introductions.
Yes, this month we do not have any new members. Should I go ahead with the reading of the attendance?
Before we do that, now is the opportunity. Let's say any first-time visitors or new members, could you raise your hand now, please? And I see Harvey,
Raise my hand.
welcome. And Bert, welcome. Am I?
Mona?
Yep.
Kelsey,
Thank you. You guys are announcing faster than I can scroll. That's great.
Kelsey Brenton, yep.
Did we get everybody? And welcome everyone. Thank you guys for coming and joining us. Excellent. Well, fantastic. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and let Ann do the reading of the list of attendees.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to read the attendance that I've marked from who I saw in the window. And if I don't call your name, can you please send me a private chat that to let me know that you're here and I will mark you down. So, all right. Starting with, okay, W7 DEB, Dennis Bradford. K7 ITM, Tom Bruns. KC7YL, Carrie Burnett. AF7KB, Michael Burnett. KC7WWO, Meg Engelter. AB7RK, Gary Evans. AI7DT, Gary Foss. K2MTN, Ann Gray, myself. K7BGG, Bruce Gary. KF7WVT, Roger Hoot. N7PKK, Tom Hutchison. KJ7ENF, Randall Johnson. KJ7AKV, Tim Kephart. AJ7B, Randy. KE7FQJ, Mary O'Farrell. KJ7QFK, Jim Otis. K7NWR, Alan Person. KH6BM, Henry Polland. W7ACM, Greg Rainwater. W7SLW, Ken Rich. KC7YE, Jack Rucard. KI7DPP, Dave Summers. N7XLD, Jordan Thompson. N7AME, John Van Dalen. KJ7KEO, David Walker. KB7SOL, Eldon Wallstad. And that's it. So if you didn't hear your name, please send me a chat to let me know you're here. Back to you, Ray.
Well, thank you, and definitely welcome to everybody. According to my screen count, we've got 35 people on a Saturday morning, so thank you for joining us and attending. With that, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a repeater update. Rob, unfortunately, was not able to be here unless something's changed and he came in at the last minute. But I'm going to go ahead and see if we have anything on the repeater, but I'm actually not expecting any new updates. Henry, do you have anything on either the new repeaters or the old repeaters?
Nope. We're just humming along here.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. And we will move on to the next item, although if there are any questions on it, on the repeaters, feel free to bring it up. Seeing nothing, I'm going to go ahead and move on. We'll move into old business now. Financial committee. We're still looking for somebody to join the financial committee. We've had a couple people express interest. We're looking at that, but if anybody is interested in, and particularly if you have a background in investment or finance, we're really looking for people who want to be on our investment committee and help direct the club's investments. And if you have an interest, go ahead and get a hold of me at any time. Email would be perfect, and we will loop you in and see if it's something that you can join us and help us with. Moving on to the mailing list. We've been making this change from our old email system and old mailing system to the Groups.io. I know there's been a couple minor hiccups, but I think as far as moving email systems goes, it's gone relatively smoothly. So if you are having any problems or difficulties, if you aren't getting the new emails, and we do have some people who have not responded. So if you're one of those and you want the new emails, get a hold of myself or Rob, and we will help you with that. I was going to have Rob say a bit, but again, he unfortunately had a conflict come up this morning. He's not able to be here. So if anybody does have any questions or comments about the new email system, feel free to reach out to either Rob or myself, and we will address any questions or concerns. With that, we will move on to 7QP status. That's next weekend, so coming up real quick. Tim, what type of update do you have on 7QP?
As everyone knows, I've been doing the mail out for the sign up sheet. We can only have one operator per band, per mode, per time slot. I'll go ahead and send that out again. My plan is to, on the Friday or next Friday, send out a finalized list of all the time slots that everybody is signed up for. If you see an open spot on that list and you're and you want to jump on the bands on the weekend, you can either call me. My phone number is listed in that, so I can make sure that no one else has taken that time slot, as we want to adhere to the rules, one operator per time band per slot. And I can check to make sure that that time slot is open. Other than that, it's pretty much the same as we did it last year. Does anybody have any questions as far as what's going to happen?
Yes, this is Dave Freeze, K7GP. How do you coordinate or avoid duplicates with multiple operators?
Well, at the end of the event, like we did last year, everybody emails me their log. I'll condense it into one main log. I'll still submit the duplicate entry only because the first member or the first contact may not have been a complete contact by one or the other parties. That way the individuals can get credit for the contact. It doesn't hurt to submit duplicate contacts just to make sure that the other party gets the contact recorded. But if you're going to run your call sign and the club's call sign, the only log that I would desire would be the log with the club's call sign. That way I don't have to sort them out. But that's not a problem. If you don't want to do it, I can do it. It's not going to be a big deal. Any other questions?
Yeah, what is your club call sign?
WA7 LAW.
I'll be listening for it. Thank you.
Good deal. And with seeing or having no other questions, right?
Okay, I'm giving just a quick second in case somebody has a last minute question before we move on. And hearing nothing, field day. Big question marks on field day. Last I checked, Snohomish County is still in phase 3, and we can have groups of up to 50 people. My understanding is that we're really close to moving back to phase 2. So who knows what'll happen between now and field day. But because there's a possibility, we went ahead and we've done 2 things. We sent out a survey on how our members would participate in field day. And we've also gone ahead and reserved a location for us. So we're prepared if the conditions allow it. If conditions don't, then we will alter back to what we did last year. So the questionnaire that was sent out, just a quick thing, about 70% of those responded that they would attend under the conditions identified, which is, social distancing, masks, that type of stuff. So we would need to meet all those requirements. And obviously we want to do it safely. Safety is our first and primary concern. So we would be following all rules and regulations on that. But 70% said that they would participate, with 20% said that they would skip or 26% said they would skip this year. And the rest of them said that they would be interested in it. So potential. Stay tuned, and we will have more as we get closer. Any questions on this? Hearing nothing, we're going to go ahead and move on. We did have a field day update coming in from Randy. Randy, you want to go ahead, and Tim afterwards?
My update is that I just reserved the same spot we did back in 2019, which is the bluff overlooking the Everett Marina, Everett Harbor. And it's in their process of being approved. And the person I talked to said there is no one else is trying to reserve that area. So it looks like we're going to get it. It's just the matter of approval of their board. That's all I got.
Tim, anything to add? Tim, you're muted.
Yeah. I was hitting my keyboard, but it wouldn't unmute me. Not much more, because as we just discussed on the board meeting on Monday, we just decided to try to go ahead and put this together at the last minute. Everything's still basically in the pre-planning stages. Like Randy said, we locked on the park just to have it in case we stay in phase 3, that we can go ahead and get together. It's going to be most likely a scaled down version of field day, being the last minute, but it's looking forward to getting out and seeing everybody and having a face-to-face chance to get back together is what the main goal was.
One significant change, for safety reasons, we're not going to have the enclosed tent. We're going to use the open-sided pop-up. So it's going to look a little different. We may not have as many antennas and such up, but we definitely are planning on and hoping for having some type of event that we can do some level of getting together and enjoying the event and each other's company. Any other questions or comments regarding field day before we move on?
Looks like you have a hand up, Bruce Gary.
For those of us new to the world, what is field day?
Oh, very good. Thank you. So field day is the big event. Well, one of the big events for ham radio. Others could probably, everybody will probably add their own little bit to what field day is, but basically In the simplest form, as a club, we set up our club equipment out in a field, usually a park, and make as many contacts as we can following the rules of the event. It's definitely a lot of fun, good time to get together. You get to check out what equipment the club has. You get to see how it's set up. If you're new to certain things, it's a great learning experience. Even like myself, who have been doing it for years, I learn new things every year about antennas and placement and conditions. So a lot of fun, a lot of interaction with other hams, and a lot of learning and just plain fun getting out and setting up our equipment and trying it. Anybody else want to add their own thoughts and flavors to it? Mike, I see your hand up.
Yeah, hi. Think of it as an opportunity for mentoring, right? That's what field day is, an operating event. Some people call it a contest. It's not really a contest. It's an operating event according to the ARRL. And it's really a chance, if you're a new guy or a new gal, it's a chance to get out there and get your feet wet and get on the air and find out what it's all about. And then if you're a guy that's been around for a long time, like some of us has, it's time to be a mentor and teach the new people what can be done with amateur radio. It's really a great event. So anyway, thank you.
And the next hand that I saw was Randy. So Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, if you want to find out more information, go to www.arrl.org and you'll type in field day in the search or keywords, and you'll learn a lot more about field day that way.
And next hand up that I see is Ann's.
I wanted to mention Kurt Green joined late, and I don't know if he has any comments because he's usually very involved with it. So,
Kurt, anything to add?
Not much. I have the purple binder. If that's going to be helpful with information from last year, but not much was done except for reserving the park. So sounds like that's already completed, but if you guys want the purple binder back, I have it.
I'm sure we will collect it at some point, or have you be the keeper in the role of it. That remains to be seen and figured out.
All right, thanks.
But definitely thanks for the reminder of where it's at, and we will definitely be looking into that as we get closer to it.
Okay. Oh, also, if you want to use that FT2000 for it, I can loan you my microphone. If there's not able to find a replacement for it.
Well, thank you very much for that offer. We will evaluate and may very well take you up on it. I've also had a couple of other offers of stuff coming in, so I will get together and see if we have a lead for this and coordinate with them. Any other questions or comments?
Ray, just one additional thing. It's kind of looking like we might be going back to phase 2 in Snohomish County, given our numbers, but we're also talking with the governor's office about changing the rules so that vaccination, people that have been vaccinated might be able to gather in larger groups. So I don't know if that's going to pan out or not, but just it's a little bit of a variable out in front of us.
And certainly, I want to echo that. This is very much a fluid situation. A lot can change between now and then. We're hoping that it changes for the better. We do have a lot of options, but doing the outside with the instead of inside the tent, doing the pop-ups with outsides, there's a lot of things we're going to do to try and make this work. But ultimately, safety is going to dictate it. And if we cannot do it safely and legally, then we won't do it. We'll go back to the plan that we had for last year. So it's definitely a stay tuned and hope for the best and do everything you can to get us moving in the right direction. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, sir. Victor.
Victor.
To Dave's point, it's kind of a point of order here. I carry a copy of my vaccinations on my phone. I don't know if anybody would ever request it, or, you know, if it's necessary or appropriate. If we've got 51 people, I don't know that I would expect law enforcement to come in and say, hey, you've got too many people here. It's just a question of, is this an honor thing, or should we have verification that we are vaccinated?
So that brings up a good question. At this point, they're not requiring vaccination for meetings. All this is fluid and can change. Ultimately, though, we will self-regulate and follow the law. I mean, that's, as a club, we just have to. I understand that a lot of people have widely varying opinions on this. Respectful of all that, but ultimately, as a club, we need to do it lawfully so we don't expose ourselves to any unnecessary risk. Any other questions or comments? All right, well, that takes us through the new business that I'm aware of. Is there any other new business?
Yes, two things, Ray. Number one is I want to remind people of Thursday night. In fact, you just gave me an idea. I might pull up.
Check out this guy's office. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm unmuted.
Oh, Thursday night, I might bring up one of Jess's videos on field day, although the majority of us have been there. Like one of the members just mentioned, what is it, Bruce? It would give him an idea of what we're doing on field day. Secondly, I have acquired another HAMS equipment. A lot of it is really old, and the majority of it right now I have been putting up on QRZ.com in the swap meet section of that. If you want to take a look, some of it's gone already, but I have also a lot that Henry has looked at of components. And it's a little tough to get rid of components because I don't know any of the members here are tinkerers or experimenters or that sort of thing. So if you are interested into looking at some components, these are probably one generation ago. They're not the surface mount, but they're transistors, resistors, capacitors, coils. Give me a call and you can take a look at it in my garage. I've got a fairly well spaced out, and I'm also already vaccinated, but be more than happy to do a show and tell on that stuff. So my phone number is in the club log, so let me know. Be glad to show anybody anything that's there. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you for organizing these type of activities. I know that takes a lot of time, so we appreciate it. This really comes to the end of the business proportion of the meeting, so last chance for new business. Are any comments before we move in today's presentation? Anybody have any last minute items?
I move we adjourn. This is Ann.
Motion's been made to adjourn. Is there a second?
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions? Your absolute last chance to comment on new business. Okay, with that, we're going to end the business proportion of this meeting and go into the much more interesting and exciting part and go into the presentation. Just to let Dave and the board know, I do need to drop off the call at 10 o'clock because I have another appointment. So if the presentation goes past that, I'll let one of the others in the program. But thanks everyone for being here today. I appreciate your attendance and look forward to seeing and participating with everyone further in the year. With that, let's go into the presentation.
Is that my cue?
That is.
Okay. Wasn't sure if anybody was going to introduce me or not, but I will introduce myself. I'm Mike Ritz, W7VO, and I'm your guest speaker tonight. I am a pretty active ham, and I've been licensed since 1974, continually. And I'm also if you're a member of the ARRL, I am your Northwestern Division Director, and I'm also a director on the ARRL Foundation, which is their scholarship and grant arm, and that's which has really been keeping me busy lately. I want to really thank Ann and Ray for inviting me here today. I did a program for you guys a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a month or so ago, on HF noise mitigation, as I recall. And they said, well, we're looking for people for these subjects. And I happened to notice that one of the subjects was N1MM. I am primarily a contester. I'm on for all the big contests. I'll be putting what I hope is going to be a big effort for the 7QP, putting Columbia County, Oregon on the air. I live down here just north of Scappoose, Oregon, right on the Columbia River, about 25 miles northwest of Portland. So I'm not, you guys are up, I guess, east of Seattle, or very close to there. But anyway, so pretty far away, but still pretty good. I can still throw a rock over to Washington, so I'm almost in Washington. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, if I can share a screen. And let's see here, which screen do I want to share? I guess I'll get started with this one right here. And hopefully everybody can see that.
Yep, we're good.
Yep.
There we go. Okay, our presentation today, and I'm going to move my screen way over to the side here. What we're going to be talking about tonight, or today, is going to be getting started with N1MM. This is basically contest logging software. A lot of people use it for field day. I'll be using it for 7QP next weekend. And this is a program that I originally put together for CPAC back in 2017. And when I saw you guys needed an N1MM one, I said, oh, I've already got that one in the can. So I grabbed it out, updated it here this last week, and I'm glad to be able to put this on for you guys. So what is N1MM software package? And what we're going to talk about is kind of what it is, what it does, what it's not meant to do. For one thing, N1MM is not a general logging software. There are better software packages out there. N3FPJ come to mind. N1MM is primarily a pretty darn powerful contest logging software. A lot of clubs use it for field day. We use it for field day here. Just about everybody I know, the real hardcore old guys, the old contester guys, use DXWin a lot. But I don't think you can really beat N1MM. What's it cost? And here's the great part about N1MM is it's free, right? Hams are cheap people. I'm a cheap person. And by God, it's something that's actually free. And they call it, really, it's called N1MM Plus. And they replaced the original N1MM several years ago, stopped supporting it, and came out with this N1MM Plus. So if you have N1MM on your computers, get rid of it and download the latest version of N1MM Plus, because they're not compatible with each other. Here's just a picture of the N1MM development team. I'm not a member of the team. I don't know anything else. I'm just a user of the software. The main guy, as you can imagine, is Tom, N1MM, and I think these pictures are probably a few years old, but they've got a pretty good development team, and these guys work tirelessly to keep this software updated. They're coming out with new updates literally every week. And if you ever, when you do upload the software, and we're going to talk about how to do that, it shows you what all the changes were. And it's basically every time they do this, every week, there's a huge page, full of what they updated in that software. So these guys work, for no pay, tirelessly to keep the software updated. And I can't tell you how much we appreciate them doing that. How popular is N1MM? Well, this is kind of old. As I mentioned, I did this program in 2017. I didn't get a chance to update it, but you can see that of all the, this is for the CQ Worldwide contest. This is back in 2015. I'm sure it's probably even more now. But of the contests that had at least or that at least had 200 submissions of a logging software, you can see N1MM was by far the most popular. The primary reason is because of the support that the development team has on it, and also the fact that it's free, right? WinTest costs money. I don't know about TR4W, CTest Win, WriteLog is another one that you pay for. N3F FJP you pay for, and none of these I don't think are as powerful as N1MM. What are the requirements for N1MM Plus? Well, if you have a TRS-80, it's probably not going to work. Even if you have an IBM PC with 256K of RAM, it's probably not going to work. You might want to get a newer computer. These are computers that I started on back in the old days, back when this IBM PC here was several $1,000s, you know, but you could buy the TRS-80 for about 600 bucks. What are the requirements? It need at least a 1.6 gigahertz single core processor. I recommend a dual core, especially if you're going to try to do any networking of multiple computers, and especially if you're going to do RTTY, the RTTY contest. It really becomes a power hog, and of course, telnet operation also absorbs some resources in the computer. I'm sorry if you're an Apple user, if you're an Apple fan, unless you have a Windows emulator program, the only thing they support is Windows, Windows 10 especially, and they don't support Linux. They don't support any of the other software packages at this time. They just concentrate on Windows. If you're using the MTTY program, and we're going to talk about what that is here in a little bit, for the RTTY, the requirements go up. All of my computers, and I've got 3 operating stations with 3 computers that are all networked together, and they're all dual core ones that I bought off of Craigslist for, you know, 60, 70 bucks, pretty cheap, minimum of 4 gigabytes of RAM. And it's really been pretty seamless using that. Here's where you really, I think, need to splurge a little bit. If for home use, I would stick with using a desktop computer and not a little laptop with a 14-inch screen, or an iPad or anything like that, or I would stick with something with a large screen and at least a 19-inch monitor. I've got a 17-inch. I'm actually talking to you right now on a 17-inch Dell computer, and for most contests, its screen is too small to put all the different various screens up that you need to operate a contest. And for RTTY, you really need to have 2 monitors, a monitor A and a monitor B. But it's best, like I say, with at least a 20-inch monitor. In my contest station, I actually have 2 19-inch monitors that I use. And for RTTY, it works just fine. Windows 7 or later, they originally supported Windows XP, but in January of this year, they discontinued support of XP. So if you've got an old XP laptop, I would not recommend using that anymore, especially as often as they're updating the software. It's best with an internet connection, but it's not required. So you can go ahead and use this software for field day where you won't necessarily have an internet connection. We'll talk about how to get around the fact that you don't have internet. And you say, well, why do I need internet for logging software? Well, we'll talk about that. If you do get a computer, make sure it's got a lot of serial ports on it, so that you can communicate with the radio and get the frequency out of the radio and be able to command the radio. If you operate a CW contest, you're going to want to get a thing called a WIN keyer, or you're going to want to be able to talk to your computer to get the CW automatically sent out. If you're running RTTY, you can use a Signal Link or one of the other packages for digital communications. It's going to probably need a serial port, and of course your mouse and keyboard. I recommend, by the way, both wireless mouse and wireless keyboard if you have the ability to have a computer new enough to do that, just so you don't get any RFI. I've changed all my, especially the mouse, I've changed all my mouses on all my station to wireless and haven't had any RFI issues. Some of the features of N1MM, it's pretty much self-upgrading. Every time you turn the software on before a contest, it automatically comes up and says, hey, do you want to upload the new version? You say yes, it does it, and you're done, right? It's pretty seamless. All the major and many minor HF contests are supported, field day supported. The 7QP, of course, is supported. And the neat thing about it is, you know, there's always new contests that are being added. And of course, the people that are operating the contest are often changing the rules. So you want to make sure that you do upgrading. And there's going to be another reason why you want to do upgrading too that we're going to talk about in a bit. It also supports both RTTY and the new FT8. There's an FT8 little side engine that's used in it. I haven't really tried it. I don't particularly, I'm not a particular fan of FT8 contesting. I'd use it as a normal program, but to try to integrate it into contesting, I have not been that successful. I do RTTY contesting, CW, and of course phone. And it does really well in multi-station, multi-operator support. I have 3 stations here. For most of the contest, I'll run multi-2, which means I've got 2 stations running simultaneously. And you can run M1M, MM in the networking mode, although we're not going to talk about that here today, but it works pretty seamless to have the same log on 2 different computers. And if you have a virtual private network, you can actually operate it in the distributed mode, where you can have multiple people in multiple locations all share the same log. And you talked about how do we handle dupes when you've got a distributed station and individual logs. And that is a problem, but because of 7QP, there's no penalty for duplicates. You just work, and if you're, by the way, if you're a duplicate, they'll tell you you're a duplicate on the other end, and you can say, "Oh, sorry," and you go on and work the next guy. So I want to just add that little part in there. Anyway, so seamless multi-operator, multi-station support. They do support the VHF contesting, and they do have a de-expedition mode where you can either stay in run or stay in search and pounce. And if you don't know what run is and search and pounce, run is when you're in a contest and you're trying to work everybody from a single frequency and they're coming to you. If you're in search and pounce, you're turning the dial, tuning around, trying to find people. And sometime if the club wants me to do my introduction to contesting program, I'd be glad to do that one for you guys. That's one I've done many times, and I'd be glad to do that one for your club. And I see Ann taking notes already. Some of the features, you can also use external or computer sound cards for using digital voice keying, where instead of you having to yell into the microphone, you can just push a button on your screen, hit an F key on your computer, it'll automatically send the messages out. We're going to talk about how that works. Automatic CW generation, either using the line printer port or through a USB to serial converter. Rotator control. I haven't tried this because none of my rotators on my tower, I have 2 towers, and neither of my rotators are computer controlled, but you can do computer control where if you try to work a station, it'll automatically point the Yagi at wherever the station is, because it does tell you the azimuth location of all the stations. It's got a pretty neat gray line that's neat to have on there. I keep that on a 3rd screen, keep the ground line. You can also support 2 VFOs and have 2 different band maps, one for each VFO, and it supports SO2R single operator 2 radio, where you're operating a contest using 2 radios at the same time. I've never tried that. That's for the younger people to do. I can't. I have enough trouble operating 1 radio, let alone 2 at the same time on two different bands. And then a single operator 2 VFO, where you're on 2 bands on the same radio, switching back and forth. That it does support that if you're a glutton for punishment. It does support the telnet clusters where you can actually bring in things that are called spots. We're going to talk about what those are, and it automatically updates those through the internet, through telnet. I use for the CW contest, I use a WinKeyer to provide the CW, and it's got a full WinKeyer support. Automatically tells you where to aim your antenna to pick up a station, and gives you also the sunrise and sunset calculations for that, for what their sunrise and when their sunset is. Automatically, if you have a contest, for example, the WPX contest, worked all prefix, CQ contest, they use serial numbers as the exchange. You know, your first contact is serial number 1, your second contact is serial number 2. Well, it does it automatically, even in CW contest. The next guy you work, it'll automatically send out a new number. Really convenient. So it provides pretty much for automatic contesting. In the RTTY contest, I just sit here and push buttons on my computer, and even in the CW contests, I very rarely have to even use a key. It's all done via the computer. You know, you pick up the CW in your head, and you use the keyboard to send everything out, so it makes it pretty darn automatic. In the RTTY contest, you're literally just pushing a single button the whole contest. So how to load it, how to find it, you go onto their website at n1mmhamdocs.com. and click on where it says here at the bottom to download download the full installer. It'll go ahead and download it for you. And after you get the software downloaded, you're going to want to try to set it up. And the way you set it up is you go into, the first thing they'll do is give you this little screen that's kind of this is the logging screen, where you can actually enter or you could call it the station entry screen. And the first thing you want to do is go to configuration, change your station data, and then load all the stuff in here, starting with your call sign and your name. And by the way, if you're operating in as a club thing and using your WA7LAW call, you can just change this for every contest if you want. I operate using 2 different calls here. I use W7VO for my normal contest, and then for the WPX contest, I use a club call of Whiskey 7 Echo. So I change this call sign depending on what contest I'm using. So you go ahead, load in your name, load in your call sign. If you can load in your grid square, I'm in CN85MS. You can enter, if you want to, enter your latitude and longitude in. For some of the, especially for some of the UHF, VHF contests. Enter your ARRL section. So if you're doing an ARRL contest, it'll automatically give you either, if you guys would be Western Washington, WWA. Here I happen to be in Oregon. You can enter your CQ zone and your ITU zone. We're all here in CQ zone 3 for the CQ contest. And if you're in the ITU contest, the radio sport one in July, you will be ITU zone 6. And if you wonder what those are, you go ahead and look them up. But you take my my beginning contest when you find out what those are all about. Then the next thing you want to do is, now you've got all your station data loaded in there. Next thing you want to do is set up the radio interface. It's got to be able to, it's convenient to have the N1MM control your radio and have the radio provide information to the software so the two can talk back and forth. If you've got an older radio that does not support having a CAT interfaced, don't worry about it. There's ways around it. But if you have a radio that's newer than about 2000, the year 2000 or so, that's got a COM port on it that can be controlled, you want to go ahead and set that up. So the first thing you do then is you go under config ports, mode control, and audio and other. And you want to go down and look at the hardware screen, figure out what port that you want the radio to talk to the computer on. And in my case, it was COM1. My radio is an FT2000 Yaesu, so you just select and you'll get a big screen, and you select which radio you want. And by the way, they're constantly updating this for all the new radios that come out. And then it'll tell you on the side over here, it'll give you the default values for 4800, no parity, 8 bits, 2-stop bits. Data terminal ready is always on, ready to send is always on. But if you want to change these, you can go ahead and hit set and then go in and change those settings. But I found the default bit values are usually best. Even at a fairly low baud rate, your communications going across the bus are not that, they're not that intensive. So the lower baud rates work just as well as operating. There's no reason to have a 32K baud rate or a 19K baud rate, because all you're doing is just taxing the system. But usually the default seems to work pretty well. The next thing you want to do if you're going to operate, and here's the difference. If you have to first of all determine when you're setting the contest up, if you're going to operate assisted or unassisted. Assisted means that you're able to click on a band map and have the band map populated by spots that are coming in from the telnet session. Hopefully you know what that is. If you don't worry about it. This may, just may go over you, but don't worry about it. But so you have 2 choices when you're operating most contests. One of them is to operate assisted, where you can click on spots, and other people that I have workstations will upload the station that they work to the internet, and you can actually tell where other people have worked the station. You can click on that, and hopefully the guy's still there, and you can work them. So that's what operating what's called assisted. If you're running unassisted, which means you're not going to use the spots, you don't need to set up the telnet connection, but most people that operate, it's kind of convenient to do, and here's how you do it. So the first thing, you have to have an internet connection. It doesn't have to be really fast, but it's got to be, it is a resource hog in your computer. If you don't, especially if it's only a single core and a slow computer, it'll actually slow the computer down, and you'll be able to slow down N1M. So there are ways to limit the spots. We're going to talk about how to do that. I suggest when you set up the filtering, you get the spots that are only coming from North America only, and only in the contest bands that are being used in the contest. If you're going to operate a single 40 meter contest entry, you don't need to know what the spots are on 20 meters, 10 meters, 15 meters. You certainly don't need them for 17 meters and 10 meters and everything else. So you want to limit that to as much as you can. We'll talk about how to do that. So when you open up the Telnet session, you're going to want to try to pick a cluster site. The one I happen to pick was one that's here local in Vancouver, Washington. And there's a whole list. Every one of these sites here that's on here, and there's probably 100 of them to select from. VE7CC up in Vancouver, Washington is a good one. I'm sure that there's one that's fairly close to Seattle. There may be one that you guys can use. If you have a question, talk to one of your contester guys in your club and ask them what Telnet they're using. You want to enter your station information here so every time you log in, it will automatically log you in with that call sign. And then go ahead and hit connect, and you'll see if you have success, you'll get a screen that looks like this one that says, "Here, you're now connected to the skimmer." You hit this SHDX down here in the bottom, and all of a sudden it'll just show you all the different spots of people that have been spotted on the internet. And so we're looking at here is this is a station, for example. This station, Papa Delta 7 Fox Tango, which is down in Brazil, worked in HS0 ZLE. I think HS is Saudi Arabia. And he indicated here the guy was 5'9". So you could probably see if you could try to work this guy. One thing you want to do is limit the spots, though, so that you're only getting ones out of North America, because you don't care if a guy in Russia worked another guy in Russia, or a guy in Russia or in England worked another guy in England, or worked a guy in France, right? Because chances are you may not be able to hear them. You're just wasting your time clicking on those spots. So try to get the ones that are in North America. How to filter spots. You can go on to the, where it says filters, click on the filters on the Telnet here. You can change your DX spot timeout. I believe the default is 60 minutes, but sometimes the guys don't hang around for 60 minutes. So you'll go to click on a spot and you'll find out the guy's already gone or he's moved on somewhere else. So I usually set this to about 30 minutes or so. Sometimes you want to show the non-workable spots. It'll show you stations that you really can't work for that contest. For example, if you have a station where you can only work DX stations, you can't work US stations, you don't really want to show the US stations that are spotted. You want to only see the DX stations. So you can show up here whether or not you want to see those stations. You can also, here's what I recommend is you filter by prefix, either only in the US or only in North America. North America is what I usually click. So I do care, for example, what the VE7 guys, which are British Columbia, where they are, because we're only a few hundred miles from there. If somebody clicks in from VE7, I'd like to know what they're seeing. You also want to go in and to select the bands and modes. And here's a typical for a contest. Basically, the bands that are only used in contests, which are 160 meters, 80 meters, 40, 20, 15, and 10. You don't really care about any of the VHF, UHF. And often you can either click by contest, where it will say, okay, you're operating, you show that you're operating a CW contest. You can click CW, or you can just have it decide that, in fact, it knows you're in a CW contest. It'll automatically only give you the CW spots. If you don't click this, you click all modes. If you're in a CW contest, it'll give you even the phone spots. You don't want to see the phone spots. You want to only have the CW spots. If you've got a wind keyer, which I have, you can go in and hit the screen for your wind keyer control, set which serial port the wind keyer is tied to, hit the wind key and then hit OK, and then your wind key is now seamlessly tied to the software. What's a wind keyer? Wind keyer is available either a kit, and what it is a little box about that tall and about that wide and about that big, and they used to be available kit. I believe they're only selling them now as a kit form. I haven't bought one in a while, but they're available from K1EL. They're about $110 or so. You only really need it if you need a CW, if you're operating a CW, and I'm sure most of you guys are not operated or interested in CW. It plugs in the USB port. Your paddle plugs into it, and then a USB cable goes to key the input of the radio, and that you're done. You set the port number from the hardware configuration menu. You need to set the Win key operator, and then say in some older computers you may need to load a software driver. If you got Windows 10, it's automatic. If you're operating Iridium, we'll just do this real quickly. N1MM uses a separate software package called MTTY as the software engine to decode the RIDI and to be able to send the RIDI. However, it's not included. So you've got to go in, and it's another free software package. But if you want to operate RIDI, you've got to go down and download it. And then you've got to tell N1M where you've downloaded it to. So you put it into a new folder, and then you have to tell it that you're using a sound card, which is what the a signal link is, and you want to tell it where to find on the computer, where to find the MTTY software. And so in my case, it's in the C drive in a subdirectory called MTTY, and the program is called mtty.exe. And if I'm using a sound card, I'm using AFSK, or if sometimes you use FSK, but there's another N1MM program that I do that's a more advanced one, where we go into a little more of the details of some of this stuff. But if this glosses over your head, don't worry about it. Just, you're interested primarily in the phone setup. So let's go ahead and work a contest, right? We got the software up. The software knows who we are. We're talking to our radio. We're talking to the telnet. Let's operate a contest. So the first thing you're going to want to do, especially if you haven't operated your radio in a while, and I have a contest station, but 90% of the time my station is in a separate building from my house. It's in a shop. It's 3 rooms that built into my shop, and so the radios don't get used that often. So I've got to go out there and update N1MM software. I've got to turn my computers on generally 2 or 3 days in advance to get the Windows 10 to update. You definitely don't want to start operating a contest if you've got a computer that you haven't had Windows 10 updated in a long time. You want to go in the software package of Windows and turn the automatic updates off for a duration. Usually I do it for a week. So, once again, been there, done that. One thing you don't want to have happen is have Windows 10 decide to do an update right in the middle of your contest. So go in and turn the updates off, but make sure it's updated ahead of time. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to update the N1MM software. And if it's been more than 3 or 4 months since you've updated it last, it's going to be a little more of an issue. And I've actually had to, especially if it's more than 6 months, I've actually had to go in and reload the software because it has so many updates it has to do that it kind of goes nuts. But if you keep it fairly updated, it's pretty seamless. You also want to update the supercheck partial file. It's called master.xcp, and you go under tools, and you're going to want to update this. And we're going to talk about why this is required. If you're operating unassisted, you're probably not going to need this, but this is really kind of a neat part of N1MM that'll go in and tell you if you're working a station, it'll tell you if that station you're working is a known contester, or if he's somebody that doesn't really contest, and it may be a new guy, or it may be a guy, or it may be a bad call sign. And so if N1MM will come up, and if you enter a call sign in the entry window, it'll actually check that against the database and tell you if that's a known station. If it's not a known station, you can kind of question and say, okay, did I copy that call sign wrong? Or is this just happen to be a new guy that I worked? And it makes you listen a little bit more carefully. But you do want to keep this thing updated because it's always getting updates from the ULS database. People change call signs. There are new call signs that are added, new call signs that are being used in contests. So you want to, after you've updated the software, you want to go in and download and install the latest SuperCheck partial. It's all you do is click on it, does it automatically. You don't need to enter anything. You're going to also, especially if you're operating a DX contest, you're going to want to enter the latest country file. So you'd go to Tools, download and install the latest country file. You click on it, it's automatic. You don't need to do anything else. And I'm saying this is very important because if you're running the latest version of software and you don't have the latest country file, it'll actually give you an error message and tell you that you have to update this. And the reason this is important to update, especially in a DX contest, is there's always new call signs. There's always new prefixes that are being used by some countries and special prefixes that are used. if a guy changes in their country and they're using a new call sign or even changing countries, it'll tell you that ahead of time. And so it'll know more call signs if you keep this thing updated. Then you go down and you go to File, and if you're operating a new contest, which you have to do this for every contest, say open new login database. And it brings up the screen that looks like this. This happens to be for the, I happen to have selected, you can click on the little arrow and scroll down and give you all the contests. There's one here for field day. There's one for QSO party, and QSO party is a little bit more complicated because there are multiple, and you have a separate little screen on the side that says for 7QP. But this happens to be the sample screen is for the ARRL CW contest. So I want to select that. You can operate your category, either single op or multi-op. If you're operating from home by yourself, you'd be single op. Whether you can be all band or single band, or what band you're going to operate on, whether you can be high power, low power, or QRP. If you're going to be, this obviously is a CW contest, you're going to be CW, but there are some contests, for example, in 7QP, where you can be phone, you can be CW, you can be digital, you could be one of those three, or you can be any combination of them. You could be CW and digital, and you're going to want to tell it what mode you're going to be operating. Well, you've got some contests, for example, the CQ Worldwide have an overlay where you can have a special category if you're only using what are called tri-banders and wires, or if you're a rookie, you've been licensed less than 3 years, you can enter a special overlay category. You can enter that here. If you're a fixed station or a mobile, in 7QP, they have fixed stations and mobile. If you're operating assisted, remember I mentioned assisted is using the band map to help you find stations to work, or unassisted. You can select that here. If you're a multi-op station, you can operate either transmitter 1 or multi or 2. Your send exchange, and always check this to make sure that it matches what the people are recommending or what they're requiring. And this, since it's an ARRL contest, I'm in the Oregon section, so I put my section in here, and this fills in pretty much automatic, but always check it. Some of them might have, for example, a serial number, like the WPX contest. It'll give you a little hash mark symbol. Hash mark symbol in the N1MM speak is serial number. So, and by the way, it'll automatically, for all of these, it'll automatically put the 59 and the 599 in automatically. You don't need to worry about that. And if you're operating a multi-operator station, you can enter the call signs in here. Soapbox I haven't really used, but it'll automatically write up a soapbox. Generally, you don't do this until after the contest is over, when you tell everybody how awful conditions were and how your antennas broke, and you found out that after the contest started that you hadn't updated Windows 10 and you missed the first hour of the contest. But this is basically where you put in all your complaints that happened. But you generally don't do that till after the contest. So you operate the time, Bower, mode, overlay, number of transmitters, check the send exchange. So we did all that. And then guess what? You're ready to start operating the contest. The next thing you're going to want to do, and one thing that they just added fairly recently, if you just go in this area right here, this blue area, and you right click, you can actually turn on a little GMT clock here. So you've got your normal time on your computer in the corner, but you can actually right click on this and you can actually turn on a little clock. It'll tell you, and this GMT clock will be synced to your computer. So it gives you a pretty darn accurate time. I believe it even shows you the second. Yeah, it does. So I can't see it here because I got all you guys on my screen on the side, but it gives you a little GMT clock. So you'll know exactly when the contest ends by looking at that. And this is the first screen that pops up. This is your entry window screen. So you can enter the call signs in this area. You can put the class in here. This happens to be set up now for field day. So you've got your class of 1A or 1B, and then the section. So this is, I can tell right now, this is set up for field day. And down here at the bottom, you see this little, what I'm not showing here are the F keys that are in here. And so what it does, it assigns the F keys on your computer. This is probably not a very good screen to show it, but the function buttons. You can either use the defaults that the computer supplies or customize them for each contest. And I have mine customized for each individual contest. It works with either the phone contest, CW, or even the RIDI ones. You have separate messages you can send for whether you're in search and pounce mode or run mode. For phone operating, you can actually have enter your own WAV files. For example, you can say CQ contest recorded as a WAV file. Tell N1MM where to find that WAV file, and it'll send it for you automatically. So when you want to call CQ, all you do is hit F1 on your computer to automatically call CQ for you. To access this, you can go onto any of the F buttons. And I need to change this to a better screen that shows physically shows the F buttons. But we're going to do a demonstration here when we're done, and I'll show you what the F buttons look like. But when you do hit it, right click, it'll show you what all the run messages are that are currently in there, and all the search and pounce messages. And you can go in and change these things any way to anything you want. There's a couple of spare ones. If you have a spare, if you want to, for example, want to be able to send a message like Roger, 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 right? Saying yes, yes, yes. The guy will say, is your call sign this? You wanted to send, yeah, Roger. In CW, you can actually assign one, for example, F7, change it to SPAY, have it to change it to say RRR, and then tell it to send RRR, it'll send RRR. Where you see my calls, where it actually sends my calls. So when you're calling CQ, if you're running and calling CQ, if I click on F1, it'll say, it'll start giving my call. CQ test, oops, my call. Hang on, let me back up here. There we go. If you hit F2, it'll send the exchange. It'll send you 599 and the exchange. So 599 Oregon. Remember, these were automatically loaded in from that first screen. My call, it knows what your call sign is. It'll put your call sign in here. So in this case, it's a CW one for saying thank you. It'll say thank you, my call. So when I work somebody, after I work them, I can say thank you, and it gives my call out. If you want to send his call, you can click on F5 and it sends you his call. The little exclamation point happens to be where it loads and pulls his call out of the entry window. If you want to have him send it, repeat the exchange, or have you extend the exchange, it'll give the exchange, but it'll send the exchange. It'll say 599 Oregon, Oregon, Oregon. Sometimes some people only want it to have it sending 2 times. Just take the third one out. Again, you can have it say again. I didn't get your call sign again, or if in a DX contest, you have the DX stations have to tell us what power they're running. You say, well, I didn't get was it 100 watts or was it 1,000? Did I miss something? Or was it 150 or 120? Because you beat the CW, you didn't quite hear it right. Well, you can change that here, or they're calling, et cetera. And then search and pounce, you basically want to send pretty much the similar messages, but you may want to have them repeat their exchange. You may want to tell them, they may say, well, what's your section? And you say you want to deal with this type, well, Oregon, Oregon. So here I send, you click on F7, it automatically sends OR, OR, OR. And et cetera. So these are pretty easy to change. Best thing to do is to get in there, look and see what the default ones and change them. For phone, it gets a little more interesting because there's 2 different ways you can do it. You can either have the WAV files and tell the computer, tell the software where to find on your computer these WAV files that you've recorded. But what I do is I've got an FT2000 that has built-in voice keyer. If you've got an FT3000 or any radio with a built-in digital voice keyer, what I did here is I only use 4 single sideband functions on my FT2000. And what I do is I have 4 of them set up. One of them is these cat commands, which you can get right out of the manual. I have a cat command that says CQ, and what it does, it'll send CW, either in CW or in phone. It'll call CQ for me, or give the exchange, or give my call sign, or call QRZ. So I can just hit either F1, F2, F3, F4, and I can actually have access to either the CW, automatic CW in the FT2000, or I can send it via the voice keyer built into the FT2000. In RIDI, it works through MTTY, and the one big difference in the RIDI contests is that you have to be able to tell the transmitter to turn on and then put it back in receive mode when you're done. So very similar as far as messages are concerned, but the first thing you do if you're doing a run message, you want to transmit, tell it what you want it to do, and then put it back in receive mode. If you leave this receive mode on the end, it'll send the message, but then it'll keep your transmitter on all the time. And you don't want that, right? You want to be able to turn on the receiver, or turn the receiver off, turn the transmitter off, transmit what you want to do, and then turn the transmitter back off again. And that's an anomaly of the RIDI operating. That's the one big difference on here. And pretty much for these, the more you play around with N1MM, the more you can kind of customize these for your own taste and for your own contests. Now let's take a look at, I mentioned all these different windows you can bring up and why you want to have more than one monitor. And right now, the only screen we've talked about has been the entry window where you actually enter the station that you want to work. And there's a whole bunch of these different screens you can have. And unless you have a large monitor, you don't have enough room to put them all on a small screen, or the text has to be so small you can't see it. The most commonly that are held open during a contest are the entry window. That's where you enter the station information, the exchange. That's the one we just looked at. But also you got to have a log. You got to have somewhere to log where you can see where you've worked the stations. The band map, if you're operating in assisted mode, where you want to bring the telnet spots in. A check one where you want to check and make sure the station you're working is in this database of known contesters. If it is, you've got, chances are you've worked a good station and you've got the call sign right. There's also ones you can look at what multipliers you've worked in a contest. For example, a lot of the contests will have where DX countries are the multiplier, the number of DX countries you've worked. Well, there's actually a little screen that'll tell you which multipliers you need by band, the ones you've worked, the ones that are spotted, and the ones you still need. So there's a nice tool for you to tell you, well, have I worked England on 20 meters? It'll tell you. You can look over there and say, well, I still need these guys. Of course, there's another way it tells you too in the entry window, and we'll talk about that in a second. You can also bring up the score summary to kind of tell you how you're doing. You've got a digital interface that helps you tune in the RTTY stations on using RTTY. And then if you have another screen that's really useful is the network status one. And this is, you have two stations that are operating using the same log. You can actually send messages back and forth between the two stations in like a little separate little chat window. So you can go over and say, and you can actually see what the other guy's doing. If the guy's not going fast enough, you can say, hey, you better, hey, slacker, you know, you're not going fast enough, or you missed this guy, go see if you can work him. So you can actually communicate between the different stations using the network status window. So let's talk about the band map window. So now we've got the log setup screen. We've got the entry window. This is what the band map looks like. And once you've entered, you hit SHDX here. It'll show DX. It'll bring all the different stations that are being spotted. This happens to be for a DX station, a DX contest. This is on 20 meters or excuse me, 15 meters CW. And see, we've got LZ, and we've got Slovenia and Russia and Italy, and there's a US station spotted. Another Russian station. Here's FG is one of the New Caledonia or something, I think. Another, see, here's England, and here's another Russian station, and Belgium, and anyway, so you got all these different stations. This is one of the Russian republics. It's at the top of my head here. But anyway, you got all these stations spotted. If you click on these when you're in the contest, it automatically takes your VFO to this particular frequency. If you right click on it, it'll tell you exactly what frequency is, but you click on it, and it also gives you the bean heading for each of these stations. If you're in a CW contest and these, there's another way besides people working stations, there's a thing out there called the cluster where it'll automatically pull in stations that are being spotted by these remote radios that are computer controlled. And so all these ones that have a pound sign after them, the hashtag, these are all being pulled in. These aren't stations that are being worked by people. These are people that are calling CQ, and they're being picked up by what's called a skimmer. Skimmer is essentially an SDR that's looking across the whole band. If it hears something, it reports it and says, oh, this guy here, this guy on this frequency. And so these are all skimmer spots. It also gives you the beam heading. So from my station here, if I want to work a station, the station in Russia, I know I've got to turn my antenna to 12 degrees. If I'm working a guy that's on the East Coast, I got to turn it to 240 degrees. This guy is down in Oceania, 153 degrees. So the opposite direction. Actually, this one's is actually in the Caribbean, looks like. So anyway, so it gives you the beam heading that's kind of handy to have. The color of the spot is very useful. And you notice that all these spots are red. if you see a red, and this is what's really useful, red means that that guy that's being spotted is a new multiplier for you. Remember that contests are the number of contacts multiplied by a multiplier. And the multiplier could be a state, it could be a county, for like the 7QP, for people that are working in the 7QP, it could be a country. And so every time you see a red spot come up on this band map, that means, hey, that guy's worth a lot of points because he multiplies your score. So these are very valuable. If you're in a DX contest, for example, the CQ Worldwide contest, and you see a green one, that means that guy's a double multiplier. He's not only a new country, he's in a new zone that you don't have. There are 40 CQ zones, and every zone is a new multiplier, and every country is a new multiplier. So you can have double mult. So anytime you see a green one, those guys, that's a guy you might want to spend some time on because he's worth a double mult for you. After you've worked these guys, any new ones within that same zone, any new station in the same zone or in the same country will show up as blue, but it's not a new multiplier, but he's still worth points. So green is the most valuable. Red is very valuable still because it's a new multiplier. And the blue ones are after you've worked all the greens, worked all the reds, the next thing you want to do is concentrate on the blue guys. And as you work through the contest, you'll find out that by Sunday, by when you first start the contest, everybody's red and everybody's green, probably everybody's green. Then a lot of people are green and red, and there's some blues, but by the time Sunday rolls around, you're 48 hours in the contest, everybody is either blue or they're going to be the next color, which is gray, which is not workable. Those are people you've already worked, or they're people that you can't work in this contest. For example, it's a DX contest, and you can't work US stations. So they're gray, it just shows you don't need to worry about them. So gray are not workable. And these are basically be duplicates if you tried to work them. So this is a very valuable screen to use if for no other reason to tell you that you've already worked somebody. If I operate unassisted, and I'll be operating the 7QP contest unassisted because I'm going to be running. I don't care about the band map, but the stations that I work will be in here, and I'll be able to see them, and it'll log every station in there as a gray station to show that I've worked them. And as I mentioned, clicking on a spot takes your transceiver, if you're tied to the radio, directly to that frequency. So you can literally, on a band map, you can literally, click on here, see if you can work this guy. You can't hear him, you move on to the next one. Just keep clicking your way down, and you can actually just work the contest without even having to turn the VFO on your radio if you don't want to. Right? You just go on and click on the spots, and sometimes they're there, sometimes they aren't. Like I mentioned, we're in a lot of these spots are only from North America, and the East Coast guys obviously hear Europe a lot earlier than the day than we do. That you'll start seeing European spots come in on 20 meters in a contest at 5 o'clock in the morning, and yet 20 meters may not open up here till 9 o'clock. And you can kind of also gauge this and use this to tell you what are going on in the bands, who's working what, even though you really can't click on them to work them till much later when the band's actually open for us here on the West Coast, but you can actually see what the East Coast guys are working. So it's still kind of valuable to have, but I say it's not necessary, especially if you're running unassisted. Hovering over a spot gives you the following information about it. If you hover over an individual spot on the band map, it'll actually give you the exact frequency sent by the spotter, the call sign of whoever spotted it. So if you can, if you see a rare station on there, I got to work that guy, but you find out that who's spotting him is somebody, for example, in Indonesia. There's a station on Indonesia, but you find out he's been spotted by a guy in Japan. Well, you may or may not be able to hear him. Chances are you won't. So you can ignore it and move on. It also gives you the time in minutes since that station was put on that as a spot. So if the station is pretty stale, it's been up there for 45 minutes or 30 minutes, he may or may not be there. So you don't want to spend a lot of time listening for him or waiting for him because he may not be there. But if he's new, it'll come up with a little new symbol. That's a new spot. Pounce on it right away. And also any comments that are sent with the spot can also be displayed. For example, a lot of times you're going to see that there's bad spots, and I'm going to talk about that in here in a second. If you've ever used that band map, you know that a lot of people get call signs wrong, and then they go ahead and spot it. And if you don't pay attention, you may perpetuate that, right? Especially in CW contests, they're only about 95% accurate. Don't rely it as being 100%. Make sure you listen to the station and verify that that's the real guy's call sign, because a lot of times they'll get Tango and Echo mixed up. The people in South America have trouble between Tango and Echo. I know in the, I operate the WPX contest. I use WW7E Echo, right? Well, they Echo to them and Tango sound pretty similar. And people will say, well, no, you're Whiskey 7 Tango. No, it's Echo. Oh, Tango. No, it's Ecuador. And they go, oh, Ecuador. Oh, okay, Ecuador. And they get it right. But they may have already spotted me as WW7 T. And so it'll come out there. Next thing you know, you got people from Japan starting to call WW7T and know I'm WW7E. So if you do find spots, you can right click on the spot and get rid of it. If there's one that you know is a bogus call, or you'll see it spotted twice on the same frequency with 2 different call signs, get rid of the one that doesn't belong there by right clicking on it and then hit delete and then get rid of it. You don't have to sit there and keep looking at it. But you'll find often that the band mat spots are not always accurate. Listen with your ears and verify that you get the call sign correct. And also, here's another thing, especially if you're a new contester, if you're a general class, verify that when you click on a spot, it automatically takes your VFO to that frequency. And sometimes you don't really pay attention to what that frequency is. Make sure that frequency you wind up is legal. A lot of guys will click on, for example, on 40 meters, and they'll say a rare station that's a green one or a blue or a red one, and they'll click on it and find out that no, instead of the guy being, our phone band starts at 7125. And in Europe and in Canada, those guys can operate down to 7050 or something like that. So you'll go to click on a station that's calling CQ that's below 7125. You'll click on it, work on it, and all of a sudden realize, oh, pick your 4-letter word. I just worked a guy that was out of band. So be very careful that when you do click on spots, it's a lot easier with the VFO. You know where the bottom is, you know where the top is. If you click on a spot, it takes your radio there and it doesn't care what the band edges are. It's going to take you there anyway. So be careful that especially for, based on your class of license and whether or not you're actually on a band or not. I can't tell you how many times I operate a multi-station contest here, and guys have clicked on spots and worked people at 7093 in the phone band. I got to go out and delete the contact later and say, oh, slap his hand and say, oh, watch where you're going. It's much easier when you're clicking on it than it is with your VFO. There's also the thing I mentioned, a check window when you do a band map. And if you work at, for example, in the particular case, I worked Whiskey Tango 1 Echo. And it'll also give you all the other call signs that are similar to that are known call signs. So if this comes up, well, the station could also be JT1E, YT3E, YT1A, and you can actually listen and make sure you got it right. And sometimes you can enter just a few letters of a call sign, and it'll tell you all the ones that are similar to that. So you can actually listen and make sure you got one that matches. You don't always, but sometimes you do. And this is really handy for making sure you're getting the call signs correct, or if you've got a call sign where you just can't make out that last letter, this will actually kind of give you a hint what that last letter is. Very, very handy. And as I mentioned, it compares it against the known contesters. And by the way, if you do work somebody who winds up as not in this check window, because it's a new call sign, it'll actually log it and it'll log it in yellow in your log. But that doesn't mean anything other than the fact that all that means is the station is not in the database. It does not mean it's an invalid station. It just means it's not in the database. Move on, keep on working. There's also an optional info window that'll give you your rate. It'll give you the beam heading, the sunrise, sunset for the particular station that you're working. I don't use this one very, very much because it almost gives me too much information. It'll give me my QSO rate and what my goals are for band. I'm not that interested in this, but I don't use this. It'll tell you when your last QSO was, where you can look at the band map, and this is a screen I don't use very often. This is an interesting one. It's called the available window. and it's an optional window. It's populated from the band map, but what it tells you is if you're in a contest, it'll tell you what's being spotted on all the other bands other than the one you're on. So it'll tell you how many multipliers, how many new multipliers are available on the new bands, how many cues are available, whether they're blue spots, red spots, or green spots. It'll tell you how many cues are available on the other bands. So if all of a sudden you're on 10 meters, or say you're on 20 meters, and all of a sudden you start seeing spots start showing up on, and this number here starts getting higher, or even 10 meters starts getting higher, it tells you that, Jay, maybe you ought to think about changing bands. It'll actually count how many new multipliers there are on the other band. So if you are kind of starting to run out of multipliers, it'll say, well, I've got more multipliers available on another band. Maybe I should change bands. So this is another screen that's kind of neat to have. It's also got a built-in gray line. If you've got a room on a second monitor, you can actually put the gray line. It'll show you where the spots are coming from. It'll show you where the sun is. This looks like it was probably, it's in the evening here, so it's probably late afternoon our time. Or actually it's yeah, probably about 2 o'clock in the afternoon our time. It's right over Hawaii, it's noon. So about 2 o'clock our time, maybe getting close to sunset, a couple hours on the East Coast. This is very handy to have if you like following the gray line. I say, but once again, you got to have a monitor, enough monitors to be able to handle this. Really, you need, and what I do is I put this actually on another computer that's running N1MM that I only have a third monitor that I have set up that only shows the gray line. So I can go over, look and see where the gray line's at. Now it's time to set up your monitor screen of what you're going to put where, and you got all these different screens here. We've got the window, and what you want to do is click on window, and then there's all your different screens that are available, and pick them up and kind of put them where it's best for you to have and be able to view what's going on. If you're operating non-assisted, you only really need to have the log, the multipliers, and the score summary. That's really all you need. If you're assisted, you want to add the band map, the check log that'll tell you whether the stations are valid. Sometimes you can use that in non-assisted, but if you're working a station and you're running, you pretty much use the call sign they give you. If you don't have the call sign correct, you can just ask them what it is again. It's pretty easy. So when I'm operating non-assisted, I only use the log, the multipliers, and the score summary. If you're using a telnet, open telnet up and then minimize it, get it off your screen. If you're operating 2 or more transmitters, then you're going to need the network status screen so you can communicate back and forth between the two computers. And if you're in the RTTY contest, you need to add the digital interface screen that gives you the little thing, the little X thing that shows you where when you're tuned into the frequency, or the 2 little blips. In the advanced N1MM, I talk about more about how to operate the RTTY contests. If you're operating field day and you've got an old FT101 radio that you're using, or something that does not have cat control, I've got an FT757 old Yaesu radio that I sometimes use on field day and doesn't have cat control. Well, how can you use N1MM with it when you got to know what the frequency is? Well, what you can do is every time you change bands, you just enter the new frequency into the entry window. For example, here I had a radio that I wanted to change to 20 meters, and I'm operating phone. So I just enter 14250, hit enter, and it automatically, everybody that it logs, it'll log them on 20 meters on 14250. You won't know the exact frequency of who you log, but it will log it as a 20 meter contact. When you switch to 40 meters, you just enter 7200, hit enter, it'll automatically change it. And then everybody that enters from then on, it'll enter on 40 meters. If you're using computer control, every time you change bands on the radio, it'll automatically update the software, and the software will automatically go to the new band. You don't need to worry about it. So here's a typical contest. Here I've got the entry window up here where I can enter the station, enter the exchange. In this case, it's a CW. This is a phone. Looks like it's the ARRL phone contest, DX phone. So you've got the station you're working, the extent exchange, which would be 5.9, and then your received one, they can tell you what your exchange is, and then in the DX contest, they have to tell you what power they're running, which is either, for example, 100 watts. So some of the Japan stations, sometimes they're 100 milliwatts or 0.1 watts. So I've worked a station on Japan that's operated with 10 milliwatts. Sometimes you get some unusual ones. Most of them are KW. If somebody gives you, for example, 1,000 watts, you can just enter it as KW, and just enter them. If 100 watts, you can enter 100 or 10 or whatever. Here's the little F buttons I was telling you about. So F1 is the call sign, F2 is the exchange, and there's another thing you can operate which is called intersend message, which is in my advanced class. We can talk about how to set that up. It works really well in the CW contest. So here you've got the entry window, the log. It gives you your log. If you've worked stations on more than one band, it'll tell the other bands you've worked that same station on down here at the bottom. And oh, by the way, once you've entered this information here in on a station on one band, if you work them on a new band, it automatically loads this in here. So it makes it even faster. It'll also tell you what other bands and other times. If you enter a station you've already worked, for example, you've worked a station and they come back and say, and he tries to work you again, you can enter it in here. It'll come up and tell you that this guy's a dupe. It'll also tell you when you worked him. So you can say, oh, sorry, guy, I've already worked you 3 hours ago, and here's the time I worked you, check your log. And if he says, well, I don't have you in my log, go ahead and work him. But if you haven't, it's a lot of times they'll come back and say, oh, sorry, I'm not in a contest. I just happen to run into you again. I just wanted to say hi. Okay, well, thank you. You can go ahead and move on. But so very powerful in that respect. When the contest is over, sit back and enjoy a cool one, right? Contest is over. You go to file. You can actually, the software will generate a Cabrillo file for you to turn into the software organizer. Go to file, generate Cabrillo file, and then create the Cabrillo file, send it to the contest organizers. So let's go to file and then generate Cabrillo. You click on that. You can tell it where to put the Cabrillo file, and the Cabrillo file, you can open it up in Notebook and take a look at it, or you can actually look at it on the screen here as well. And here's an example of what the output program is. This happened to be for the 7th Area QSO party a couple of years ago. We were using the call sign of W7XQ, and it gives you all the different categories we had. We had a claim score of 167,000. We had 3 operators, and it gives you the log. And you can go ahead, if you've made some mistakes, you can go ahead, and I would recommend you at least review this. Here's an example where I see a mistake right here. Somebody entered this as K06RM. Well, is it KO? It looks like it's an O as in a 0. Well, that's obviously not a good call. It's either K6RM or that's a K06, and you got to go in and change that. So before you turn in the organizer, kind of clean this up, make sure that you haven't made any boo-boos. You can also export adev files for submitting to Logbook of the World, or to sometimes the contest organizers will do that, or to Club Log. Go ahead and hit export, export adev to file, export adev to file again, and then it'll give you the adev file, and then you can go into Logbook of the World and automatically update it. And is that all there is? And the answer is no. We've just scratched the surface of the software. I actually have a second class that I gave at CPAC. If you guys want me to do the second class, I can do that one as well, but that goes in a little bit more into detail on networking and some of the other commands that you can use in contesting. And there's a really nice manual online for N1MM if you want to learn more about it and really get on the air, use it, understand it. 7QP is a great time to use it. Field Day is a great time if you've never operated a contest before. Field Day is a great opportunity for that. But get on the air. And as I said, really did this. I'm a member of the Willamette Valley DX Club down here in Oregon, and this is where I originally did the program. So this a little plug-in for the Willamette Valley DX Club. And that's the end. I'm going to go ahead and hit Shop Scare. So I hope I haven't scared everybody away with this. We're down to 23 people, so 10 people dropped off.
Well, excellent job, Mike. Thank you so much. Really, really in detail, and we know there's more, but very much appreciate that. We have, if people want to hang in there, we can have some questions. I think Ken's got his hand up. No, maybe that's my cursor. Yeah, no, forget it. Sorry. Why is my cursor a little hand? Bruce first. Got to unmute.
Bit of a random question, but I already have 2 sports I actively compete in, and my wife will throttle me in my sleep if I pick up another form of competition. Separate from the competition aspect, how should I think about this kind of thing? Should I think about it as a skill builder? Should I think about it as you know, a way of broadening my community, or what else is it beyond just a competition?
Well, I mean, it's you talk about the contesting itself
Yeah.
as a medium. To me, it's the competition side. A lot of you guys may know me. I also have a race car and can spend a lot of money on my race car if I want. I spend a lot. When I retired, I do a lot less car racing and a lot more contesting. When I was younger, I did bicycle racing. I was a ranked bicycle racer, road racer back in the day, you know, Tour de France type stuff. And when I was a heck of a lot younger. And so I've always had the competition side of me in there. So for me, it's the competition side, it's the adrenaline. But another part of it is also using contesting as a mentor, as the mentoring side of it. And that is that I bring people, I like to bring in people and have them get in there and watch me contest. One thing about contesting that really you have to think about, especially in the DX contests, is when I'm working a contest, especially one that goes on for 48 hours, and I obviously don't operate all 48 hours of contest, but there's guys that do. But I'm talking to people all over the world at different times of the day. In the morning, I'm working people in Europe. In the afternoon, I'm working people in Africa. In the late afternoon, I'm working people in South America and in Japan and in Oceania. And then in the evening, you're changing bands and you're starting all over again. You're working in Europe. And you do this, you can basically work people in the world, all over the world, and you wind up essentially going around the world twice in a weekend. And really, what other hobby do you have where you can go around the world twice in a weekend and talk and communicate with all these people? That to me is the fascinating part about contesting. And as far as be able to show that to other people as well. Either you like contesting or you don't. But for me, it's the competition side of it more than anything, and the fact that you get to and sometimes you're competing against other people. I like to compete against myself. And if I nothing better than operating a contest. A lot of times in a contest, you'll work a lot of stations at the end, and when you're all done, you're sitting there going, "Wow, that was great," or you're sitting there going, "Wow, that was horrible." And most of the time, it's great. I mean, it's a great part of amateur radio, at least for me. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but either you like it or you don't.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Ann?
Thanks, Steve. Two things I wanted to say was, first, I was just amazed at the number of features that are in the software, which I've used the software before, and I so many features you mentioned today, I did not have any idea about. But my question was, on that super check partial file, where is that data coming from? Is that coming, is that like?
There's a separate master database that one guy keeps. And what he does is he asks people after the end of the contest, he'll ask people to submit their logs to him. And what he does is he generates this giant database of known call signs that are used in contests. And that's where it is. It's a separate database that this one guy maintains. And his database is called Super Check Partial. And the software can actually go, and every call sign you work, it'll go check that database to see if that call sign's in the database. I mean, that's really a handy. I can't tell you how many times I've operated a contest where you'll have a guy, especially in South America, where the guy is giving his call sign so fast and with a heavy accent, you just can't get that character out of there. Is it, what is that? What is that? And you'll enter the call sign in as what you think it is. And all of a sudden you'll see that, no, the only call sign that's similar to that is this call sign that ends in a tango, not an echo. And oh, that's the guy. And you'll listen again. Oh, that's right. And you'll be able to have the guy. That is a really powerful, wonderful tool to have, to be able to identify, and I said, not every call sign's in there. When I operate the 7QP next weekend, I'm going to be running the whole weekend. And the whole 18 hours of contest is on. I'm going to be sitting there. I'm not going to be essentially leaving the chair unless I have to. And so I'm going to be working a lot of guys that are going to wind up being yellowed in my screen. And I know that ahead of time. In the DX contest, it's not so much, especially guys that are running. If you have a station that's running that is a call sign that's not in super check partial, make sure you've got his call sign right. But a lot of times you'll find out that those are essentially our new call signs. There's a lot of countries that issue new call signs for specific contests, or you'll hear some of the 1-by-1 call signs that the US stations use. Those won't be probably in the super check partial. So if you know what the call sign is, go ahead and work it, but it's a really powerful tool.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Jordan?
Yeah, question here on keyboards. You know, in some contests that I've been in, the real estate is really precious on that table. And do you find that the keyboard with a number pad is useless or useful? And the other thing would be like a touchscreen Windows 10 machine. I mean, I get these, like what's behind me, I get these from work when we retire machines. And you know, I clear them out and they're 24-inch, 25-inch, whatever they are. Touchscreens are pretty responsive, and I wonder how that would work with this. I've never tried it. It's been like 10 years since
I haven't either, but to me, I operate contests and I'm pretty serious about it when I do it. And I want to have minimum hand movement. So I actually start off using small keyboards because they didn't take up a lot of space on the shelf. You know, you get the little tiny ones, but then you're fumbling around. I got big hands, right? And you're fumbling around with these little tiny keys. I found out the ones that work the best are the larger ones, like the old IBM ones, right? That had the big giant click buttons on them, right? Like the old IBM PCs. And what I'm using now is I'm using Dell computers that are cheap desktop computers. And I've actually got them, you know, stacked up. And I've got one that operates the N1MM. I've got one that operates a PAN adapter for my FT2000 using an SDR. And a third one is used to just operate a gray line and give me the N1MM gray line. And I found that actually a larger keyboard, I can actually, I keep the keyboard in front of the radio and I can go from the VFO job and move my hand very little to find this big keyboard. So it's all about minimizing hand movement. You know, you want to have the radio. I'll show you guys a picture of my station when we get done here. And the idea is to have to move your hands as least as possible during a contest. So everything is right down low. And if you have to pick up to go this on your screen, that takes extra time, extra movement. And after you do that enough, your arm's probably going to get tired. So I don't know about a touch screen, but in a long contest, that may be, you know, tiring for you to have to keep lifting your arm up all the time.
How much clicking is going on during a contest? I know the contest would vary, but
the most clicking that goes on is basically if you're running, I've got my finger on the F1 button and I'm just clicking F1 over and over and over again, calling CQ till somebody comes back. Either in phone, I have phone in phone using my voice keyer in the phone, or on CW using the win keyer. We'll automatically send the CW and I call CQ. If you're really lazy, you'll hear guys that are calling CQ and you go back to them and they're not there. Sometimes guys, just to hold a frequency, there's one of the things you can do in N1MM is you can put it in basically the recycle mode, where it'll call CQ every 5 seconds. And the guys can actually use that to hold their frequency while they go off to the bathroom or even go off and go have lunch. And the radio will sit there and keep calling CQ, but there's nobody home. You'll hear that's one of the things you can turn on in N1MM. And the only time I use that feature is late at night. When I'm sitting there and I'm half asleep and there's not much going on in the band. But yet I still want to have I still want to be able to catch people as they run into me, and they want to sit here and just keep clicking the button over and over again. You'll fall asleep. So I go into the loop mode at that point. But like I said, for me, it's all about minimum hand movement, and a touch screen may be tiring after a while. But try it.
Thank you. Victor?
Hi. Victor.
Victor?
Hi. Two things. One, I've learned over the years, and I've known this for years, the keyboards, the standard keyboard is actually made for a left-handed person. In accounting and bookkeeping, the trick is to keep your fingers on the number pad and not have to pick up your pencil every time you do an entry. So you're writing with your left hand and you're using your right hand on your numbers. which means that for 80% of the people, the keyboard is actually backwards. The manufacturers have never figured that out and should be building both sides of the keyboard. The question I have is the gray line, because I always understood that the gray line was east-west and that the operators were bouncing off the gray line and hitting 45 degrees away. Lately, people have been saying that the gray line is north-south and you're reaching South America rather than Europe because you're following that gray line for 20 minutes as it passes over you. And I looked at your map and it's showing an east-west pattern. So what's the truth on gray line?
Mike, you're
Unmute.
muted.
There we go. Somehow I got muted myself. Anyway, let me talk about the first of it. First of all, when I'm operating a contest, I use my left hand for doing almost everything. I tune the radio with the left hand. The radio is on this side of me, and I'll show you my station in a bit. The radio's on this side. The amplifier's on this side, right? So I use the left hand for that. The right hand, all of my antenna controls for the azimuth of of either tower, which antenna on. I've got probably 9 HF antennas. So I can change antennas up here, and my keyboard entry is both hands. But as far as hitting the F keys, I do that with my left hand. I tune the radio with the left hand, and all the radio adjustments are done. So I can actually be tuning the radio while I'm changing antennas using the two hands. But for the radio, it's all done left-handed. I don't try to cross over to do that, right? So I have my screen sitting in front of me. The radio's on the left. All my antenna controls are on the right. And as far as gray line is concerned, the gray line occurs when the different layers, some layers are going, the F layers are going away, the D layer is coming in, and it's that magical time when you've got partial D and partial E and F. And that follows east-west as far as sunrise, sunset. It has to do with sunrise and sunset, and that line you're seeing is a sunrise sunset line. Now, whether you have north or south propagation is a completely different issue than gray line. You'll find out now on 10 meters, even though we've got a couple sunspots, you're going to find out that most of the 10-meter stations you'll work are going to be in South America, and that just has to do with the propagation path. It has really nothing to do with the gray line. The gray line is where sunrise and sunset are, and that has to do with east-west time. Okay.
Okay. Any more questions, comments? And Mike, just for the record, Seattle is the southern gateway to Snohomish County.
Oh, okay. If I can, let me go ahead and share my screen again. And I want to show you, if I can, how can I, here's my screen. Hold on, I won't do that PowerPoint slide. I'm trying to find my, how to get just my screen itself. Is that my screen? No, it's a blank screen.
Sometimes it takes.
Well, I want to get my computer. Maybe I have to minimize it. Oh, let me get rid of this. Hold it first of all, and let me get rid of this. And now let me share the screen. And I want to show you how my station is set up. Screen share. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen now. And yes, I do keep a lot of stuff on my screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, here, this is my main contest station, and I actually have 2 rooms built in my shop. And you can see I've got with a keyboard, I've got a rather large keyboard because I want to have nice big keys to use. And the radio is here, the amplifier's over here. I can look up and see what's going on with the power over here. Antenna tuner's up here, but all my antenna controls are up here. I've got 2 towers, I've got 2 rotators, I've got a stepper antenna, I can change bands, I can change, I've got 160-meter sloper antennas, I can determine which direction I want the slopers to go. And this is a main antenna switch where I can control which radio. I've got 2 stations, which radio is on which antenna. So I've got an antenna A, antenna B controls here. And so same thing on this side. This is a mirror This is an FT2000. This is an FT1000D. Older radio. I've got 2 monitors, so I can keep the one set of N1MM ones over here on one side and the ones I don't need as often on this side. These 2 screens are networked together through a computer here and a second computer over here. So this is the one that's used for the SDR, which I use as a PAN adapter. This one's used for N1MM, and this one's used for N1MM on this station. And these 2 stations are talk to each other. So this one might be on 20 meters, while this one's on 15 meters, or this one could be on 80 meters at night, while this one's on 40 meters. So once again, everything here I can do with my left hand on this side, and then all the antennas and rotators I can control with my right hand. So I can actually be tuning a station in or resetting something while I'm trying to rotate the antenna around with my left hand. So it's all about ergonomics, right? Let me go ahead and stop scare. Okay, any more questions?
Very nice setup. Any more questions? All right, well, Mike, thanks so much. It was an excellent presentation. Why don't we unmute and give Mike a round of applause?
No, thank you guys.
Yeah, that was great.
Excellent, excellent.
Well, like I said, if you've ever used N1MM, hopefully you learned more about it. If you haven't used N1MM or done anything at all, it may be, which is maybe why a lot of people dropped off. But and there's so much more that software does that I, some things that I don't even use. But we're just kind of, as I mentioned before, we're just kind of scratching the surface. There's actually another whole 40-minute program where I talk about how to do RTTY contesting using MTTY, and how to use some of the special commands for contesting. When I do CW contests, I use a command called enter sends message, whereas all I have to do is just keep hitting the enter key, and it'll automatically go to the next step after I work somebody, and I can just literally use the enter key for operating the contest. I enter their call and hit enter, and it automatically cycles through as he gives me his exchange. I'll automatically send him a thank you, automatically calls the queue for the next guy, right? And you do that with one key. Now, you don't want to necessarily do that in the phone mode, but in CW mode, it works really well, and you can get a pretty good rate. It also works with RTTY. So anyway, any more questions? I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to talk to you today. And by the way, if anybody missed my presentation I did for you guys on noise mitigation, HF noise mitigation, I'm doing one for the ARRL Lifelong Learning Program. That's going to be a webinar on May the 6th. So that'll be part of their ongoing series for learning. And once again, I want to thank you guys for having me here today.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll be ending the recording now, but we'll be putting it up on our YouTube channel either later today or early tomorrow. So it'll be available for rewatching. But thanks, Mike, so much. And
all right.
Look forward to seeing you again.
All right. Take care, everybody. I'm going to drop off and go have breakfast. See you later.